Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of big finished audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. And today, on the 6th of October 2019, I am starting a look at the second television story from Season 18, Meglos. Now, starting with Part 1. Alright, so let's talk about... I think an important thing to talk about Meglos is its story structure. Now, what do I mean by that? What I mean is that in a Doctor Who story, in a four-part, Doctor Who story, or even in a two-parter, you have the... you have the Doctor and companion arrive in the situation, often by the end of the first episode. That means they get involved, and we have some conflict. That's just sort of... And we have some conflict with other characters, like the Doctor is arrived. Mainly because Doctor Who works on the fact that the Doctor and the companion are the main characters of the drama. They are the ones, even when it's like, say, the Doctor was a sort of an observer, like in a Hartnell historical, things still happen. The Doctor still is involved in the story, and is involved here, and gets things done. Now, Meglos episode 1 is an episode that doesn't actually do that, and that's a problem, because this entire episode, which it's nearly 25 minutes long, it's not like it's a small episode or a small scale or anything. It's a it's a story where by the end of the episode, the Doctor and Romana haven't left the TARDIS yet. And if I'm going to be honest, that is something that is just... It isn't helpful for the story to have the Doctor and Romana not be a part of the adventure like that. It sort of makes it so you ask yourself, why is this story doing what it does? Like, why is this the story that, like, why is this a story where you're not doing a story about, the actual characters? Because the Doctor and Romana, they essentially stay in the TARDIS the entire time while repairing K9, and then the big cliffhanger is them getting trapped in a chronic hysteresis, which is a time loop. What's nice, actually, is that that's a good cliffhanger. But with that, there really isn't much for the audience necessarily to gravitate towards. Most of this episode takes place on Tygela, where, like, an old friend of the Doctor... It's basically the science versus religion, should we go back on the surface? There's, like, a war, and it creates sort of a bit of some drama and some action there. But it's even though it is just kind of a standard, is science good or is religion going to win out in the end? It's not like here's a standard story that you... It's basically, here's a standard story that you basically write the plot to. Honestly, all the characters on this planet are kind of dull, except one, Lexa, who's in the religious camp, only because she's played by Jacqueline Hill. Yeah, for whatever reason, Jacqueline Hill is back in this story, not playing Barbara Wright, but playing Lexa. This, um, this is just it's just an entire sort of like this is my character, and this is all that I do, and it's weird. It's a very, very weird story to have Jacqueline Hill back. And she's okay. And while that's going on, there's also the actual title character, Meglos, who is a cactus, and these, like, two smugglers and their gang, like, uh, like, um, like, the characters are Grugger and Brotadak, which is kind of like a comedy duo, kind of like something Robert Holmes might have done, but not entirely like something Robert Holmes would have done. It's not. They're not really. Nothing in this episode is well defined. But they bring this Earthling, so the cactus turns into the Earthling, and then turns into the Doctor, and is gonna trick the Tygellans. Yeah, this is a weird story. It feels like it could be okay, but it's like, but the writers are John Flanagan and Andrew McCulloch. You have it, which is weird. You have two people writing a story. That rarely happens, and it feels like they're like just like they spend most of this episode trying to keep the Doctor and the TARDIS just so you can have that cliffhanger as well. And I don't think that it's very. I don't think it's very good. It's not the type of cliffhanger you want to do, or the type of cliffhanger that that works for a story like this. It doesn't work. I can't even say Tom Baker's really good. But this is not a good start to a story. So overall, I'm going to give Meglos Part 1 a 3 out of 10. Right, it is still the 6th of October 2019, and I just finished watching Part 2 of Meglos. Part 2 of Meglos, I'm struggling to have things to say about it. Because Meglos as a story is one that I think, in the hands of maybe some better writers, could be good. Because once again, okay, after this, we are halfway through the story. The story is 50% over. Almost most of this episode for the Doctor and Romana are basically devoted to the Doctor and Romana attempting to escape the chronic hysteresis. Which they do, and when they do, they get out, and it's fine. They make it out of the chronic hysteresis alive, and I will say it is kind of clever the way they get out of it. It's like they throw it out of phase, because unlike a time loop which just immediately sets to the beginning, there's some time in between. So they throw it out of phase by like starting the sequence over again, and that works, which I guess is kind of a clever solution, even if as a solution it doesn't make any sense as to why that would work. Like why does throwing it out of phase mean that means they survive, and yay, everything's back to being good. So the Doctor and Romana can live on and go to Tygella. So it's not one of those things that normally you would see a lot of. It's just sort of a singular aspect of the story where having the Doctor and Romana basically try to find their way out of the chronic hysteresis is a way to get them actually into the story, when perhaps the story should have actually started with them getting in and out. Like, maybe this should be the end of episode 1 and have basically the first half of the story compressed down into one episode, and that might have actually helped the story, because the two writers clearly don't have the best laid plans for what they were intending to do with this story. They're just like, we wrote this almost as if we weren't interested in the Doctor and Romana, because again they don't do much. Like, Romana gets attacked by the Gaztecs, aka Brodadak, and that's the cliffhanger, which is a perfectly fine cliffhanger. It works, but also just the length of the episode. This episode is quite short. It only runs about 21 minutes, and it's one of those things where it's like, but this is one of those. It's a Doctor Who story. You have time, and even with the 21 minutes, like, the cliffhanger reprise is like, well over a minute in length. It's not your standard. It's not your standard story where you get to have a conclusion that concludes with a solid ending. No, it's one where you have a lot of space in between, and a lot of things, not necessarily that could go wrong, that do go wrong, but that just do go wrong. Like, okay, so on Tigella, Meglos is taken in as the Doctor, even though, wink wink to the audience, he isn't. And there are points where when he's alone in, like, the power room of, like, the dodecahedron, which I guess is a relic taken from Zolfa-Thura, that's Meglos' home planet, that, like, will give Meglos power to take over the galaxy or something. His plans aren't entirely explained out, but, like, he turns back into, like, the cactus form of himself because he's losing his physical form, which is just plain weird. Again, a lot of the story isn't actually explained. A lot of it's just like, oh look, we did we did kind of a potentially interesting story. We had some ideas here, and we looked at them. Mind you, Romana has absolutely nothing to do in this episode. Like, she's just, Romana and K9 are just sort of there. They are dead weight characters. There's some, like, minor jokes that are thrown against Romana about, like, forgetting her lines when they're trying to do the chronic hysteresis, but that's about it. And like, Flanagan and McCulloch just sort of put her in danger as a cliffhanger, because it's like, oh, we need a cliffhanger, and that's sort of what Doctor Who does for cliffhangers, doesn't it? It's put the female companion right into danger, which, is okay. Isn't the best. Like, it's, as a cliffhanger, that's kind of cheap, and a little tacky. Like, it's one of those things that perhaps should have been thought out more, and really, given more time to breathe and been like, hey, maybe we shouldn't do this as our cliffhanger. Maybe we should try to give Romana something positive to do as the big end of episode cliffhanger. But no, this is how the episode ends. So that being said, Meglos Part 3, there isn't much to say. It's not worse than Part 1, but it also doesn't try to improve anything, and we're not getting an interesting story out of it. We're just getting some people doing stuff. So overall, I'm going to give Meglos Part 2 a 3 out of 10. Alright, it is the 7th of October 2019, and I just finished watching Part 3 of Meglos. Okay, so Meglos has been a difficult story for me to talk about because, one, this is a story that moves at such a slow pace, so like in each 25-minute episode, maybe one plot point happens, and which is just, it's not a good way of telling a story. When you're telling a story, you want things to be happening at a decent pace. You can have a slow pace, but even a slow pace has to have a pace. This is like something happens and then we pause for like 20 minutes. Then something happens, then we pause for 20 minutes. Because not a lot of the story actually gets done. Like, the plot point here is Meglos tries to escape the city, and the doctor is going to be sacrificed at the end, because that's what it is. I'm going to say Romana has had absolutely nothing to do in this story. She's like, she just gets some completely random comedy bits that are basically there, I think, because it's like, hey, we need to give Lala Ward something to do. It kind of feels like this was meant to be a story without a companion. And it was like, well, let's just give something for Romana to do. And I mean, well, it also just feels like that Flanagan and McCulloch, the authors here, they don't really, I don't think they necessarily understand who Romana is as a character. Like, which, you don't have to have a deep understanding of every bit of Doctor Who lore to write for Doctor Who, but like, when you're writing for, the current season, and the current companion, you should probably, be able to know, like, this is something that Romana could do. This is also a story where where it's like every single character introduced is there. It's like there's just a lot of characters introduced in that first episode, and it's like you get it feels like there's no actual time spent with any of them. Like you have Lexa, the High Priestess, played by Jacqueline Hill, who is trying her hardest. Oh, she is trying. Probably is annoyed that she isn't playing Barbara, because, she was in the classic series, and she did have a good, she was pretty, she did have a good character in the classic series. But no, she is basically just like, yeah, she's trying. She's not really, as a character, she's just given very little to work with. And in getting very little to work with, she's just, kind of relegated to the sidelines until it's like, surprise, I'm going to sacrifice the Doctor because you broke our religious freedoms, because I'm not the actual villain. Meglos is the villain, but I'm another source of villain because religion is bad is the message. Yeah, the story is doing a science versus religion sort of thing, and it's not well executed enough to actually make a lot of good make any sort of decent points. It's just sort of like, well, we have science and we have religion and they're fighting, and religion's bad because it believes in silly things, which isn't a good critique of religion. Like it could be a good point if there was more thought put into it, um, and perhaps it was a bit more engaging, like, and maybe there was a bit more explanation, like a lot of the world building here of this planet, of the planet Tigella, and like why the dodecahedron is this important object and gives them, well, one, it powers the entire city, so it's like it is important. Like it's not just an icon. Like the scientists seem to try to like make it. Like it's obviously has some actual significance. Like Meglos wants it because it's going to save his planet. Um, because that's something that's also happening. It's weird. Yeah, it's just this episode is tonally confused, and I think it's just in generally confused as to what it really wants to be. Um, it's definitely the weakest episode so far. I haven't even talked about. Um, yeah, so like, there's also like this stuff with like the dude from Earth trying to rebel against Meglos from the inside, which is like, ooh, here's some drama. So it's like that's, I guess it's trying to build some tension and quote unquote drama, but it's not doing the best of jobs. It's just sort of there, to be part of the episode and to be like, yeah, we could have drama, but we also just have, you know, a character being a character, um, with not a lot actually, with not a lot actually happening. Um, like the guy from Earth doesn't even get a name. Like he's literally just sort of like he's credited as Earthling in the credits. That's all. That's all that he is given to be identified as, and to be identified with. It's not it's not conducive to good storytelling if that's really all you've got to give your characters, is just like, here's a name, and here's not even a name. We don't even know, like, what's his backstory. Like he could be a great source of emotion for the characters, because he's basically the one that's sustaining Meglos's form as the Doctor. Um, because cactuses or cacti need to be sustained. Look, this story is just it's just a story that there's just not really a lot of enjoyment to be had here. So overall, I'm going to give Meglos Part 3 a 2 out of 10, and I think that might even be generous. Alright, it is the 8th of October 2019. I just finished watching Part 4 of Meglos. Okay. So, Meglos isn't a good story. I think the last 3 episodes have established that. Episode 4 almost takes it to a whole new level of just not doing anything. Basically, the entire episode, mind you, this is, all the episode is, all that it's been, I don't want to say building up to, but all that it's been going towards, is this, is this. It's basically a comedy runaround on Zolfa-Thura while Meglos tries to blow up Tigella because he wants to have the universe. And then, yeah, Meglos gets defeated by his own henchmen blowing up the planet. Like, this is a story where the Doctor, the protagonist of the show, the main character, is absolutely useless in the finale. Like, that is, he doesn't contribute to the conclusion of this story. He's literally just there, to get captured and then blow up the planet with the Gaztecs and Meglos on it. He is... This isn't a point where the Doctor does anything of note. The Doctor is just there to be there. It's one of those really weird things where you don't get a sense that it's like, oh, the Doctor is saving the day and really doing a good job of doing it and being an awesome character for everyone to love. No, he is just there, being like, all right, I've got this potential to tell a story, so I'm just being here because that's what I need to be. I need to be here to tell the story and to be the one who saves the day without actually trying to save the day. It's something that I think just it doesn't work on a story level. It's one of those things where you kind of have to realize that the Doctor has to be the one to save. Well, he's got to be the one to save the day. He doesn't do a good job. He's got to be able also do a good job. He's also got to be the one to actually do it. Saving, like, he's got to actually contribute. And the Doctor just doesn't. Plain and simple, he doesn't. He's just there to be. He's just there to be. He's just there to be the one in the middle of the action, and not even like, hey, here's a big amount of here's a big amount of concluding stuff from me. No, he doesn't. Like, Meglos disappears 5 minutes away from the end. Like the Doctor, like, Meglos leaves the Earthling to try to escape the cell that he gets put in by the Gaztecs because, oh, we're betraying him. We've been trying to betray him the entire time. At this point, Meglos really didn't need the Gaztecs. He could have killed them. Also, oh yeah, the character of Lexa dies, saving Romana, which is apparently supposed to be. It's treated like it's some sort of redemption. Kind of just comes out of nowhere, to be honest. Instead of actually, actually trying to redeem the character in any way, it's just like, oh no, she's dead now, so that's fun. That's a thing that happens in the story. Again, Romana's just sort of there. She doesn't do much of anything. like anything of note, other than just being there. As it's like, did I mention I'm the companion here? Like there's absolutely nothing to Romana as a character. It's just like, no, she's there. It's really nothing. It's just like, oh, the story ends. So overall, I'm going to give Meglos Part 4 a 2 out of 10. And that being said, we add up the scores and average them out to give Meglos a final score of 2.5 out of 10. Thank you, everybody, for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. As always, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we start the first in a sort of trilogy of stories that make up a nice little arc, and the television and a story by an author who actually goes on to write some Big Finish stuff that we've actually already covered. And we introduce a new companion with Full Circle.